Another senseless killing, another irresponsible, irrational policeman, in this context, played judge, jury, and executioner right on the streets in front of the eyes of millions of people. And there had been other killings over the last few weeks, a killing of a young lady in Louisville, Kentucky by the name of Breonna Taylor. The police came into her home. She and her boyfriend were there, and they ended up killing her, which was the wrong home. And then a few weeks before that, actually back in February, the latter part of February, a young man was jogging in a white community, and here in Georgia, Brother Aubrey, and he was killed by former policemen. And so these consistent incidents that occur have basically caused people to come to the conclusion that enough is enough and want to see immediate action. I think that Minneapolis, and hope that they will prosecute all 4 officers. And I think that that's one of the reasons why there's still great frustration, because it is taking a long time to see some degree of initial justice.
What would your father have made of this? He, of course, lost his life to violence, yet he was famously a man who always advocated peace. What would he have made of where America has got to? Would he have seen any improvement in racial equality or not?
Well, I think, number one, had he lived, we would have been far beyond where we are now. He wanted to eradicate what he called were the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. He said, I've sort of adopted or adapted the phrase violence, poverty, racism, and violence. I believe that we would have resolved many of those issues had he lived. Obviously, if he was to come back right now, he would be very, very deeply disturbed by the conduct that we see. 50 years ago, he led a demonstration over 50 years ago in Memphis, and sanitation workers had signs that said, I am a man. We are requesting dignity and respect. Treat us like human beings. 52 years later, Black people and white people and Latino and Hispanic people and others are standing with signs saying Black Lives Matter. People are still demanding dignity, respect, and justice. So the real question is, have we made any progress in this area around some policing? And the answer would be, we still have a ways to go, and systematic change has to occur.
It's been very interesting watching the way social media has put a lens on these protests. We're seeing a lot of other police brutality being highlighted in videos taken by people's phones. We're seeing a lot of very peaceful protests as well as the looting and violence. We're seeing police officers and army representatives and others taking the knee in support. Scenes that I don't think I've seen before like this, and it's all being brought to the world. So I do feel that there is something happening here which may have a more lasting effect. Your father, although a man of peace, I think I'm right in saying that he always said he understood violence when people protested against racial inequality. He didn't endorse it, and he didn't think it was the answer, but he understood the anger that led to it. What do you think of the way these protests have been conducted? Because the vast majority of people are protesting peacefully, but there is looting, there are buildings being set on fire. Does that help or hinder the cause?
You mean specifically the looting?
Well, the looting and the arson of setting fire to buildings and
yes.
so on. The general destruction.
The destruction, I don't feel necessarily helps the cause. In fact, we saw Terrence Floyd, George Floyd's brother, who encouraged calm and peace in Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed. And so my dad used to say, though, violence is the language of the unheard. When people are not heard, they are not seen, they are not considered. Sometimes they resort to the lowest level. And that is, I see, the result of what we're seeing. But as you just stated, I would like to see more coverage. In Flint, Michigan, for example, the sheriff marched with demonstrators.
Yeah.
In New York, in I think one of the North Carolina cities this evening, there was a protest where the police kneeled with the protesters, and that's happening all over the place. Now the police have to do their job, so they will stand back up, but they're showing solidarity.
I feel that amid all this horror and all this mayhem and chaos, that actually there are glimmers of hope here where I feel like there's something happening. Do you feel that, or am I living in cloud cuckoo land and everyone will be going back to their normal lives in a week?
I don't believe that people will go back to their normal lives. I think that we're going to finally see some systematic change, as you've just articulated and shown. I've seen individuals who've done something like that, but I've never seen a universal level of support. I've never seen policemen take a knee in this way. I've never seen some police figures marching with demonstrators. So there's a different climate. And this is not like in the former days. Yes, people want law and order, but everyone has the propensity to see that wrong has taken place over and over and over again. When Mr. Floyd was killed, the first thing I thought about was Eric Garner in New York City, who was killed a few years ago with the chokehold. And so it repeats itself. And I do believe not only are people tired, people must see something different. And so we have got to rise up and do better and do differently and treat people like human beings. That's all people want. They want to be treated in a humane way. We are a much better nation and world than the behavior we exhibit. And if we do not, my dad would say, of course, we got to learn nonviolence too more. And this is not to condemn anyone. However, I do not condone violence. But if we don't learn nonviolence, we could face non-existence.
Martin Luther King, one of the key things is leadership. And I wonder what you make of President Trump's leadership in this situation, particularly when he uses Twitter as a platform to tweet bigoted police chiefs saying when the looting starts, the shooting starts. What should President Trump consider right now that would heal rather than hurt?
What I would have liked to have seen the president do was to call religious leaders and his base together to say to the nation that we need to call for calmness, not to stoke the flames of hostility. I don't know that he knows how. I was hoping that he would look down into depths of his heart and soul and for one time respond differently. But that's just not who he is.
Do you know what he could have done? Do you know what he should have done? He's completely incapable of doing what I'm about to suggest. But I've been following the whole Colin Kaepernick campaign, and when this NFL quarterback took the knee during the anthem, he got so much abuse. Donald Trump sided with the NFL owners. There was a build-up of hate towards Kaepernick and every one of the other black players that took the knee with him. He's basically been ostracized and hasn't been able to work again in the sport that he loves. But my God, has he been vindicated in the last week by seeing an example of a white racist policeman take the knee to snuff out the life of a black man. I mean, the irony of that is not lost on anybody. But imagine if Donald Trump, rather than stirring the fire and pouring fuel on it, imagine if he came out of the White House with those protesters and went down on one knee. Imagine the power of Donald Trump doing that and what impact that might have. In one action, I genuinely believe he could make an enormous difference. I don't think he has it in him. I don't think he thinks it can win him an election, but it would be morally the right thing to do.
There's no question about that. That is absolutely factual. And I don't know that, as you say, that exists. I have to continue to pray. I'm always hopeful, even in the worst of times. My father and his team and my mother and her team and many, many, many before us never gave up. So we can never give up on a person changing. I don't expect it, but I have to always be hopeful.